All right, welcome for some fresh folder content. Not too long ago, I did an update and thank you video for all of the support I got during my recent hard times. Thank you all so much again. During that video, talked about some of the knives and tools that got me through the roughest part of that chaotic move into, well, the new place, which included house painting and making a bunch of repairs on an old building and wrangling a long neglected yard and then having all my stuff packed for weeks and weeks, so I did not even have utensils to prep food, cook, eat with. And one of the knives that came in really handy for some of the most abusive tasks was my cold steel SR1 Lite. It's basically a folding version of an SRK. I've had this knife for about 4 years now and just haven't gotten around to reviewing it for one reason or another, so I'm going to make up for that today. And speaking of things I haven't gotten around to, I feel like I do need to make a confession here up front, though it's probably going to cost me some of my knife guy cred. I don't actually own an SRK yet. In fact, I don't really know how I've managed to avoid having one. But we'll talk about that some more later. What that means, though, is I don't have the fixed blade version to compare this to, which means we'll just have to look at it under its own merits as a really durable and really affordable 4-inch folding knife. Let's go ahead and start where we usually do, with the friendly end, the grip frame, folded in the pocket carry dimensions. And I'm going to be making lots of comparisons going forward to a couple of my other 4-inch cold steel folders, specifically the Voyager Large and, yes, the Formax Scout. I'm going to put up some pictures so you can see that side-by-side visual, but quick look at them. All right, dimensions in many ways very similar between the SR1 Lite and the Large Voyager, but because of certain aspects of the shape, we'll also talk about the weight of the Voyager, these disappear a lot more into my pocket than the SR1 Lite, which does feel like a big chunky tool in my pants. Okay, maybe not the best choice of words, but speaking of big chunky tool in my pants, yeah. Formax Scout, significantly bigger and, yes, heavier. Okay, how much weight are we talking about here? 6.8 ounces, 193 grams, which puts it weight-wise right between the Large and XL Voyagers. Kind of an interesting spot to be in, but, yes, significantly lighter than the 10.3 ounces of the Formax Scout. Length, kind of what I expect from a 4-inch folder. It's 5 3/8 inch grip, point to point, 13.5 centimeters. Width, because it's kind of a narrowish blade, it's actually a shade narrower than the clip point Voyagers. It's 1 3/16 of an inch, 3 centimeters. And the thickness, overall, I'm going to say very similar to the Voyagers at 9/16 15 millimeters, but what's playing against it is, yeah, it's kind of a very squarish grip, and we'll also talk about how some of those squarish angles feel in handling comfort. But in bringing the weight down, because you do have a really thick blade that we're going to be talking about, the build is, well, the scales are Griv-Ex, a really hard plastic. Underneath them are no full metal liners. The support comes from, well, you've got the triad lock, which also has 2 stainless side spacers on it, and that takes up about 2/3 of the length of the grip, and then the rest of it is filled up with a back spacer. Now, I'm not sure if this is synthetic or aluminum. A lot of times I assume it's synthetic, and then I scuff it and realize it's actually aluminum. If you happen to know, put it in the comments. But the knife has proven, and we'll do our impact and durability test, very, very solid. Nothing's loosened up with all the use I put it to, so I'm not really concerned with the construction. You know, they cut back on a few things to try to make it a bit lighter, but it hasn't really sacrificed durability. Couple of other things to note. You have a really big, thick, wide stainless steel clip that, yeah, it does make the knife ride kind of high in the pocket. So when we talk about optics, there's a lot of shiny metal visible in your pants. Very similar, actually, to, well, what you tend to see with the 4MAX Scout, as compared to, well, the subtler presentation of the Voyager. Also, action. All right, triad lock. I mentioned this in other cold steel videos that I get a lot of inconsistency from the factory. Sometimes I get one that is smooth as glass, and other times I get one that's all gritty and even sticks. And I have to break it in, tune it up. This one came to me very light and smooth. Yeah, just a pleasure to open. Now, speaking of opening, you've got thumb stud, but no factory pocket opening hook. Could I attach a snaggle tooth to that? Absolutely. Will I? Well, considering how much use I put this knife to up, I probably will. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And we'll also see how the mass of that blade and the smoothness of the action allows me to, yes, very effectively shake it open. But, all right, let's get to the blade. Real quick, just to show that I pay attention to and appreciate your comments. This is specific to a comment that came in about my Espada reviews. My knife friend was having an issue that the way he was gripping the knife, when he bore down, pressed down really hard, he was getting blade shake because his hand was partially activating the triad lock. And I had never heard of such a thing before, but I figured I'd run a couple of experiments. And, okay, well, if you have, like I do, a wide selection of cold steel knives with triad locks, one of the things you're going to see is that they are very inconsistent about where they place that lock button in, shall we say, height on the grip. Sometimes it's up closer to the blade, sometimes it's down further. And yeah, on the Espadas, it's up kind of high. The Espadas also give you several different ways you could potentially grip the knife. So yes, I did a little experiment. If I grip this knife in a very specific way with my hands and squeeze down or press down really hard, yeah, it's a thing. Now, I'm not squeezing down hard enough that I'm afraid I'm going to unlock the knife. And with cold steel knives like this SR1 where that lock button is further down on the grip, also this doesn't allow me so many options for where to grip it. Yeah, my hand's not going to hit it there. Probably not going to be a problem. But, okay, down in the comments, let me know if this has ever come up for you with a cold steel triad lock folder. And thanks for the comment. If I was to sum up this blade, I would say, oh my, this is a thick, sturdy beast of a knife. As I mentioned, I don't have the SRK to compare it to. Hopefully I get one soon and do a side-by-side comparison, so stay tuned for that. But I can't tell you at this point whether they were successful or not at making a folding version of that knife. If you are familiar with cold steel triad locks, you know that they are potentially as durable as some fixed blades, and this one certainly held up to a lot of hard use. And I think that's what it's designed for. If you look at the geometry of the blade, it tends to imply what it's going to be good at and not so good at, which has proven itself in both use and testing, because it is thick but not a very wide front to back, not a very slicey knife. Design probably more for durability, again, in those hard use tasks like carving, chopping, splitting, and yes, prying, which is what I used it a lot for. Chopping some wood in my forest of a backyard, prying out nails and staples, and yeah, even opening paint cans. Using my knife as a pry bar, usually not recommended, but this one handled it just fine. So this was the knife I reached for when I had a task at hand that I was worried would potentially damage one of my keener blades. Also, I wasn't terribly worried about damaging it just in case I did, because, okay, let's talk about value for the money. Put a couple of links down in the description, but shop around. You can usually find these for $40 US or less. So yeah, I wasn't terribly worried about it getting damaged, but hey, it didn't get damaged. Now, since it is so affordable, Was there any cost cutting involved? Well, we talked about the friendly end. You know, it's mostly plastic, not a lot of metal in there, except for, you know, the triad lock and its reinforcement. Held up just fine, though. What about the blade? All right, now maybe this was a choice for another reason other than trying to cut costs. This version is 8CR14, so not the best steel, not the hardest steel. So yeah, maybe not designed to take and keep the keenest edge, but maybe designed to, again, take that abuse and not be brittle. And my test files are saying it's running somewhere around 57 HRC. So not the hardest edge, but not soft by any means either. If you're familiar with the SRKs, you know they come in a 6-inch blade and there's a 5-inch compact version. The SR1 has a 4-inch blade. Well, a little bit more than 4 inches. If you have a carry length restriction in your area, be aware that if I'm measuring this from the base of the blade, I'm getting more like 4 1/8 inches, about 10.5 centimeters. Now, width front to back, 1 1/8, about 3 centimeters. Now, compared to some of my other 3.5, 4-inch folders, that's not terribly narrow. But then when you ratio that against the thickness of the spine, that stock is 5 millimeters thick, which puts it at the top of the range of my beefy cold steel folders, along with, yes, the 4MAX Scout. But the 4MAX Scout, as you see, has a wider blade, so therefore I get some of that sliciness back. Also, the saber grind runs a bit higher on the blade. Okay, let's talk about that. So visually, at least, since I don't have one to compare it to, it does look like an SRK. This version has a flat saber ground blade. It's got a nice satin finish on it, very crisp lines. You've got that straight clip point that does have, you know, a bit of a swedge on it. It doesn't have a back edge, but we'll talk about how that functions in tip penetration and durability. But yeah, that saber grind runs about 3/4 of the way up that edge, so not a very acute edge angle. Again, probably designed for durability more than sliciness. And I'll roll in my test footage here in just a second. But a couple of other features to talk about. Overall length is 9 3/8 inches, about 24 centimeters. Point of balance, because there's a lot more beef up here than down here. It's about right at the top of that main finger groove, which, again, I'll talk about how that feels in different handling tasks. Speaking of handling, yeah, there is a bit of a space up here, not really a finger choil, but a place I could put my index finger on the grip that gets me right up to the base of the edge for close work. Plenty of real estate on the back for pressing my thumb on, some nice angles I could potentially strike a fire steel on. Now, there's no jimping on the blade, and this is one of those odd choices I see on different cold steel knives, where when it comes to jimping on the grip, sometimes they will put the cuts all the way through the triad lock, but here, as you can see, they're just on the grip scales and then on those sort of liner spacers, but not all the way across. But it does give me a little bit of texture. So this obviously isn't going to be the out-of-the-box edge, but all I've really done to it over the years with all the use it's been through is, well, mostly refresh it on a fine steel ceramic rod. Let's see where it's at right now. I mean, it is a thick beast of a blade, not very acute in the edge, so I wouldn't consider it very slicey, but not bad. Let's do the Kyle test. Enough of a tip to just poke right through there. Yeah. Okay, yeah, snagged a little bit. How about some cardboard? Because I've been using it for a lot of that. Again, a little thick going through the media. Not my sliciest knife, but yeah, not bad at all, I'm going to say. SR1 Lite. Redwood target, SR1 Lite. Not very comfortable. Edge turns towards me. Actually, a little better. Reverse grip. Oh yeah, that's nice. Bamboo test, SR1 Lite. Hits pretty hard. SR1 Lite. Got some dry fir and some apple wood. Carving. It's not the sliciest knife. Good leverage on it. Definitely got good leverage on it. Similar to some of my other thicker bladed fixed blades. Well, let's try a different kind of wood. See how it does. Yeah, okay. It's resisting this a little bit more. This is the harder wood. But yeah, it's biting in. Alright. It's about a 3/4 inch ash branch. See what it takes to get through it. Out of curiosity, let me do some side-by-side chopping. This is a dry fir branch. Well, it certainly holds up good, but big hot spot at the bottom of the grip. All right, got to compare it to 4MAX Scout. Well, hits harder. Doesn't have nearly as much of a hot spot on the grip, but I just don't feel like I'm getting better penetration. I used to be insane. Let's try it with similar blade length Voyager. Actually, this little knife's got more bite to it. And edge geometry is important. And I'm not really getting any hot spots on that. So that one actually won. Let's try getting through a thinner branch. All right, 4MAX definitely wins, but all right, surprise contender, Voyager. Quick summary test results. First up, stabbing and thrusting in various grips into my new portable Pell Mini Stab-M. Mini Stab-M is several layers of thick cardboard backed up by a couple of inches of compressed brown paper bag paper, and I also stabbed and thrust directly into my redwood target. Tip performance, awesome. Durability, awesome. Durability of build, awesome. Kick back into me. Okay, I got the worst of it from a couple of hot spots on the grip shapes in the conventional forward grip with the blade facing away from me. That discomfort faded when I reversed it edge towards me for whatever reason and completely disappeared in the reverse grip. This was by far the most comfortable. And that's an interesting finding. The next test, the bamboo test, hacking and slashing into a piece of hard bamboo at different angles to see if I can intentionally induce chip or roll on a fragile edge or loosen up a build. And yeah, this knife laughed at that test and bit impressively into that hard resistant media. Speaking of hard resistant media, pulled out some dry fir and apple wood and even some ash branches to do some carving and chopping. And I'm going to say, yeah, the edge didn't perform that well. I had a really good grip on the knife, a lot of good control over it in different grips, choking up, choking down, but it wasn't useless, but the edge geometry wasn't great as compared to some of my slicier knives. Did some batoning with it, held up just fine. Then I went ahead just for science and tried some side-by-side chopping into those branches with the SR1 Lite and, of course, the Formax Scout, and just to be thorough, the much lighter but still 4-inch Voyager clip point. And I'm really impressed with how the Voyager did in comparison. It really bit into that wood. Wasn't as good at chopping all the way through it, but it held up just fine, bit nicely into the wood. So edge geometry, yes, is really important. And that grip is particularly comfortable under impact, at least for me. That's a preferred grip shape. But otherwise, I'm going to have to say, yeah, the Formax Scout did outperform the SR1 Lite. I think it has a better balance of thickness and mass versus, well, width of blade to give me a keener edge geometry. Another place it did better, when I reviewed this knife, I did complain about a hot spot I was getting at the very bottom of the grip when I choked all the way down in the chop. I kind of had to avoid it. This one, I'm going to say, was even less comfortable. Really kind of getting bit by that hook, so I had to make sure my hand wasn't pressing back up against it. Prevented me from really choking down as far as I could get on the knife during chopping. But held up just fine under those kind of impacts. Speaking of impacts, yes, I also threw the thing. All right, yes, it's down to the unflattering waistline view to talk about pocket carry and deployment. Now, yes, this is a heavy folder, also very squarish in profile. Definitely feel it in the pocket, even though it's not the widest folder I have. Even dropping it into a jacket pocket feels like I got a roll of quarters on me. Does that make for a good impact tool? Well, we're definitely going to talk about that. But mostly it's been living in my back pants pocket. And yeah, big shiny pocket clip is kind of visible. Talk about optics in a second. But yeah, riding high enough that I feel like I've got good positive purchase on that real estate for easy deployment. Good combination between the tension of the pocket clip and the texture of the grips. Staying put, I'm not worried about losing it, but it's also not snagging and ripping my pants going in or out. So for me, that's a really nice balance. Moving it to the front pocket, same. Now, optics-wise, yeah, even though that pocket clip is very visible, I feel like it kind of makes it look like a tool more than a weapon, at least in my head. And when it's in your pocket, people can't really tell how long it is. Now, speaking of in my head, I don't personally feel like a 4-inch folder is a huge knife, but I know a lot of people that do. So maybe a little discretion in deployment. Speaking of deployment, all right. As mentioned, no factory installed pocket opening system. Will I add a snaggle tooth to this? Well, probably, because I get a lot of use out of this knife. But for now, narrow blade thumb stud position, even with my stubby thumbs, smooth action, yeah, really easy for me to open. But I do have one more option. If you've seen some of my other big cold steel folder videos, I did kind of diss the shake open method. It was new to me, so it was kind of awkward. I was inconsistent with it, but I was also worried about, yeah, the optics of a big movement with a knife, especially with other people watching. But shall we say a combination of things changed my mindset. The weeks I spent struggling to get the house ready and the moving and everything else I was doing at the same time. And yeah, I was mostly alone. I found myself consistently deploying this knife because of the balance of the blade and the smooth action by shaking it open. Actually became my default and, yes, preferred method. Okay, I fumbled it a little bit that time. But yeah, so it's really starting to appeal to me. Yes, Mike is capable of changing his mind. Before we talk about martial potential, as always, we kind of have to hit on what's become the driving philosophy of the series, based on the wise words of Jorge Prina, that the best martial knife for you is not only the one that you have on you when you need it, and I hope you never need it for that, but the one that you use the most for the most things. Well, not only are you likely to have it on you, but you're also going to be more comfortable and familiar with it in general. The balance between utility and martial application. And I've talked about this in previous videos, that I know a lot of knife guys who carry one knife for utility purposes and another knife as a self-defense tool. But when it comes to optics, certain places with certain people might take offense to someone else having a weapon on them, and some of those people might be law enforcement. So having that knife that justifies its carry as a tool, in my head at least, is absolutely a good thing. And if it has good martial potential, well, we'll talk about that potential. But yes, absolutely, as already stated several times, this knife is a great tool. Is it great for all sorts of applications? No, but what it's good at, it's really good at, so therefore it does indeed have a place in my personal toolkit. Right, martially speaking, there's certain things it does really well by design and certain things, well, it doesn't really. But what it does well, starting in the forward grip, thrusting and stabbing, yeah, that tip geometry, great penetration, impressive channel cut into the target media, and yeah, it is super durable. Not worried about it taking any damage. If I should, shall we say, encounter any unexpected obstacles. So that's all good. Also, I feel like I've got just enough belly. Again, it's not the sliciest knife I have, but I got just enough belly, I think, that I can make some use out of a slash or hewing cut. One place I'm sort of on the fence, snap cutting. Rocking this in my hand. Yeah, that blade's got some mass, and it's balanced. I feel like I've got some good impact out of it, but it's not going to be something I'm going to rely on as a primary attack. Something to sting my opponent, make him flinch, create an opening to do something else in a quick combination. Yeah, also because it's moving fast, shiny, sharp object aiming for something vulnerable, it's probably going to get a reaction out of them. Speaking of other things it doesn't do really well, though, in that application, well, obviously it doesn't have enough length that I feel like I could use it to block, parry, displace another weapon. So my tactics with the blade are going to be evasive, countercut, counterthrust, relying on what the rest of me is doing. Also, don't have back edge, don't have a really recurved point. So yeah, I feel I can get a little bit out of going and doing a hooking action with the tip, but not much out of a flat strike or spine strike. Again, enough maybe to make somebody flinch, going for a stinging shot at their hand to make an opening for, well, something else. Now, there was a little bit of hot spot discomfort in stabbing, thrusting in the forward grip. I did round a few corners. This makes it, well, much more important for me to get my hands on an SRK with the Kraton grip to compare that knife's potential and then do a comparison video. So yeah, moving up to the top of my wish list really fast. But rotating the edge towards me North American Bowie style gets that cutting action out of the stab, but again, I don't have much on the back to make any use out of a forward stroke. However, odd result is actually a more comfortable grip under impact backwards than forwards. Speaking of reversing things, yeah, let's talk about reverse grip, ice pick. We have to get there first, of course, so let's talk about transitions. Now, I do feel like this grip geometry and balance is really good, even with my stubby short fingers, for pitch flipping. Yeah, that's nice and smooth and consistent and comfortable. I like it, but it does have its drawbacks for me. So I'm going to probably resort to my bad habit of finger twirling. The knife is balanced and slim enough to fit between my fingers, so it does that pretty well. Benefits versus drawbacks, well, yeah, it's not as secure as other methods, but for me, since I've been doing it for so long, it's a habit, it's a reflex, it's quick, and keeps the edge always facing the same way. Edge facing away from me, edge is still facing away from me, versus a pinch flip, which reverses the direction of your edge. So if you don't like it this way, you need that one extra move of rotating it, which you might not have time for, or you might fumble under adrenaline. Speaking of fumbling under adrenaline, as I keep saying over and over in these videos, never transition a knife if you're within reach of an opponent. You need space and plenty of time. You also need to be very cognizant of what adrenaline is doing to totally destroy your fine motor coordination. So within reach, never transition. Even when you have space and room, I would recommend don't transition as your safest bet, which is why it is important to practice with your knife in different grips. Depending on how you happen to pick it up, deploy it, you can still make use of it. But if you're going to transition it out of range, second safest bet is use two hands. Now, one more thing to cover though, that maybe the SRK doesn't have that nice hard corner at the bottom of the grip for an impact tool. No, it doesn't have a whole lot of metal reinforcement in that grip, but yeah, it is pretty sturdy. Might be able to get away with hitting stuff with. I wouldn't necessarily use it as a hammer in the field, but in an emergency I might be able to make some use out of it. And speaking of making use out of it, let's talk about folding it up. That is narrow enough that even with my stubby little fingers, I can get a good fist grip on it and yeah, use both ends of it as a potential impact tool. So it does add to your options. All right, let's go ahead and cut it off here. Yeah, I am probably going to push the button on the SRK this week, so stay tuned for that. Until whatever's coming next. Like I said, I've got a lot of knives to review. I've got swords to review. I've got other videos. I've got hatchets and tomahawks. But until then, as always, thank you so much for watching. Following my journey, putting up with my madness, liking the videos, subscribing to the channel, adding to our conversation. And I hope to see you back for, well, not quite sure yet.